Szia, welcome back to my channel. Today I want to talk about teaching in Hungary. Some of you have reached out and asked me what it's like to teach in Hungary, what to expect and things like that. So I want to give my perspective from my experience to help you out. The city is such an undiscovered gem. I know that it's getting more and more popular with time, but it really is like breathtaking. Some of the architecture and the overall vibe of the city is it's unique, you know. It's especially if you're like a type of millennial or younger, you know, business professional person or whatever. It's very conducive to your interests, I would assume. You know, there's several cafes and museums and stuff like that. Of course, you can Google these things. They're there. It's an amazing place, really. That's why I'm staying, or one of the reasons why I'm staying. So yeah, that's one of the pros of teaching in Budapest, is that you're living in Budapest and it's gorgeous and there's such a rich history and just all the rest of it. It's wonderful. Another pro about teaching in Hungary, in Budapest, is that you have the freedom to create materials, and this is going to turn into a negative as well, but we'll get to that later. But you have really the freedom to be as creative as you want, or at least I was. That's really cool. Like, if you are a creative person and you like to kind of figure out your own ways of doing things and, you know, trial and error or whatever, you'll be able to do that here. The kids are really affectionate, like super affectionate. Like, when I worked in the school in Budapest, I worked at both a primary school and a kindergarten, and the kids were really, really sweet. Like, just, there's none of the stigma that comes like in the United States with, like, you know, you can't touch kids, or you can't like give them a hug, or, you know, give them a little kiss on the cheek. Like, that does not exist here. They're super affectionate, super touchy-feely, and so on. So that's the positive of that, but a negative of that is, you know, you can get sick easily because, you know, kids are kids and they can cough on you and snot and all the rest of it. So, but they are really affectionate, and it's really, really nice. It can be really nice. Okay, so some of the cons, the not so good things about teaching in Hungary that were in my experience, were, first thing is disorganization. So with where I worked, the people, I know they meant well, but it just, the environment was too disorganized for me. I always felt like I was hanging on by a thread, and that I never quite felt like I was prepared for anything. There's other kind of facets of how it was disorganized. One of them being, like, you know, you would find out about classes getting canceled last minute, or holidays, you know, happening the day before, or, you know, some students would have a field trip or something that you wouldn't know anything about, and that would kind of get really frustrating because you would plan so much for certain classes and then they would be, you know, canceled, or the opposite, you would have to substitute for someone, or, you know, a Hungarian teacher that is sick. Oh, that brings me to, I didn't even talk about, I'm so sorry. Okay, this is probably common in a lot of ESL teaching environments, but the model, how teaching in Hungary, what they would do is that you would have an English teacher and a Hungarian teacher with each subject. So, for example, if I taught music, I would teach like 30 minutes or 20 minutes of music in English, and then the Hungarian teacher, like my partner, would teach 20 minutes or 25 minutes of English, or of music in Hungarian. So you had to always lesson plan constantly, which that's a whole other thing. That could get really, really tedious and time consuming. So that's kind of, it's a cool idea, and I really support the idea of the simultaneous learning, but because of the disorganization, it turned into be more of a headache than something that was fun, and that was for me. Another con is unclear goals for the children. So remember how I said that it was cool that you could make up your own lesson plans and be as creative as you wanted to? Okay, well, with that being said, you don't really know what they want the kids to know by the end of the year, which can be really frustrating, or at least it was for me. Because it's like, I want to know that the kids need to know their ABCs and all these animals and all these words by the end of the year. So then I could kind of work up toward that. But it wasn't really provided, like that knowledge wasn't really provided for my situation. Yes, they had school books and we kind of like abided by the school books, but they didn't kind of draw out like, okay, at the end of the year they need to be able to spell their name and write this in English or whatever. So that was difficult. And like I said, I was a primary school teacher as well as a kindergarten teacher, and the thing is, you can't use any writing in your lesson plans at a young age. Like, they can't learn how to write the English letters or anything because they're learning Hungarian. So that kind of adds an extra struggle. You have to really be animated and kind of act like, a dancing monkey for a big portion of it, because you don't get to say, okay, this is cat, C-A-T. Like, you don't get to do that. Or I didn't. Yeah, let's see. Okay, this is controversial, but I think it's worth bringing up. A lot of the students were not, okay. The discipline in the States, what I'm used to, is way different from the discipline in Hungary. What do I mean by that? So, it was really hard to get the kids to kind of settle down and listen and follow procedure, I guess, for lack of a better word, because it's not as militant here as it is in the United States or in Britain. And also, I think a big factor toward that is that the breaks between classes, like the kids don't get to have recess. They just play around in the classroom and in the hallways. So they don't get to separate, like, this is where we sit down and listen and do our work, and this is where we play. They were the same place. And so that kind of was a really big struggle for me to kind of regulate and make them, follow directions and so on. So that might be like, maybe I'm not the best at it, and I'll totally take that bullet. The last thing for me was the place where I worked. They gave you a lot more responsibilities than just teaching. So there were camps that you had to do, events you had to organize, things like that, I don't know, it just, for me, it wasn't my cup of tea. Like, other people, I'm sure, would love it and be thrilled about it, but for me, I don't know, like, I just had a really not great experience with the company I worked with, and so I had to leave. It just wasn't good for me. I mean, overall, like, I'm super happy that I was able to get a job to come over here to teach English in Hungary. To give my honest opinion about the teaching conditions in Hungary, I can only give it from my perspective, from the place I worked at. And my honest opinion was that it wasn't that great. It wasn't that great. I just felt, and I think that that's true across, like, the world with teachers in public schools, right? Like, it's, it's never ideal. But I feel like there was a lot of issues and hardships that occurred that could have been easily solved, but it just, yeah, it wasn't. So, yeah. Would I recommend teaching in Hungary? Of course. I mean, but what I would really recommend is to do your homework and to ask questions and make sure that your questions are answered before you say yes or no. I think a lot of teachers or potential teachers that want to do the, travel abroad and teach and all that, I think, and myself included, I think that we get too trigger happy in a way, like, oh, I want to move so badly, I'll say yes to anything, everything sounds great, and then before you know it, you're in a situation that it's really hard to get out of, and you don't enjoy what you're doing, and you're kind of stuck. And if I could help you avoid that situation, I will do my best. I'm sure I'm leaving stuff out, so if there's any question I didn't answer, please comment below and let me know, and I will do my best to comment back and let you know the answer that I have. If you liked this video or found it helpful in any kind of way, please give it, a thumbs up. I would really appreciate that, and it lets me know what works and what doesn't. If you haven't subscribed, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. So, see ya. Hello.